edition of Sports View. I'm Ron Cameron.
And I'm Denny McClain. I want to welcome you, too. We have coming up in just a few moments Eli Zaret from TV2, and of course he does a pregame show. It's the Lions pregame show and not Wayne Fonz, so we're going to find out from Eli now that he's won a ball game if in fact they're going to rename the show and call it the Wayne Fonz Show.
And they might get another 2-year extension for the show, too.
Well,
after
you
they
never
won
know.
a game. That's interesting. Let me talk about the advertisers first. It's Binary Computers for all your computer needs. Head over and see John Waters and the gang in Berkeley on Woodward at 12 Mile. We have Al Dietrich Oldsmobile. What better place to go for a car than Al Dietrich Olds? And that's on M59 where the runway ends. The deals begin in the Pontiac Waterford area. Go see Uncle Al for a great deal. We have Sports Fans Journal. It's going strong. And we're going slick on the inside. We are getting big. And it's unbelievable. All Color Magazine. We are just doing great. Now, we want you to subscribe and get one for your friend at Christmas time, too. Dial this number 24 hours a day, 751-1818. Call now. And then we have the Full House Restaurant. You want a great burger, head over to Ypsilanti. And the Full House Restaurant on Ecorse Road at Michigan Avenue, the best burger in town you'll find at the Full House Restaurant. And we have Pro-Am Sports Systems. That's Pass for the Tigers, Red Wings, and Pistons. And it'll be interesting to talk to Eli about the Lions. But since you want to start mentioning about the Lions,
I don't want to talk about the Lions yet. Let's wait for Eli to come up. He's got all kinds of scoops for us.
Joe Ferguson is as old as you, Denny, number one.
Joe Ferguson is not as old as me.
Number two.
Close, though. I'm telling you, close.
He makes you look like a gazelle. The Lions won because they had a 58-year-old quarterback out there, or he played like he was 68.
Well, I want to tell you something. Secretariat could make me look like a gazelle, and he's dead. So I don't think that's true. But the Lions were expected to win this ball game, I think.
They were expected to win the ball game?
Well, oh, yeah, absolutely. Testaverde's gone.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay has no running back. And to say the least, it's a bad ball game. Testaverde in the ball game, it's a whole different ball game. But on the other hand, if Sanders plays, the Lions may have blown him out. But let's talk to Eli about all that.
Yeah, let's talk to Eli about all that.
Because he's got all this inside stuff. He practically lives with Wayne Fonz, they say. So we'll find out. Let's talk about.
Was he there when he left the scene of the accident? No, we better not talk about that. No. Oh, he wasn't there that night, Eli.
Easy,
I don't think.
Easy.
We'll have to ask him when he gets up. But speaking though of that, you're reading this Mark Champion, the voice of the Lions. This, I listened to quite a bit of the game yesterday, but this wee stuff is just got to. He thinks he's going to the bathroom or so. Wee. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Why do you want to talk about this?
Well, I just say, he's a good football announcer, but he's a cheerleader. All he does is, yeah, rah, go Lions. Every time the Tampa Bay was on the doorstep toward the end of the game when they kicked the field goal, we need a turnover here. A turnover would be nice, Jim. A turnover would be nice. Well, then, this takes a cake. At the end of the game, Jim Branstad was talking to Wayne Fonz. I couldn't believe it. That's an embarrassment to sportscasting. He's talking to Wayne Fonz in the dressing room, and he said, Wayne, you never knew that the Mark Champion from Tampa Bay, all those years he spent in Tampa Bay, you should have seen him react on that last touchdown by the Lions. Wayne Fonz said, yeah, boy, both Mark and I wanted this game very, very bad.
Well, it almost makes you believe that the game wasn't the Lions' first win that was so important. It was the idea that these two guys, both being from Tampa Bay, this was more important for them to beat Tampa Bay than the first win of the season. It may very well be.
Got to be objective doing the games, Denny.
Well,
I guess. Maybe not these days.
Objectivity, I think when you are absolutely being approved by the organization, the Lions, and being paid, of course, by WWJ, they have a responsibility to do the game in the most positive way that they can.
I guess so.
You cannot have an announcer that does ball games and to be totally objective. It's impossible.
Yeah. And be somewhat objective. Don't just lead the cheers.
Well, I don't think has any place within the broadcast. But on the other hand, I really believe...
Get the band. You should have heard the reaction when they scored the screaming in the background right in the broadcast booth.
Let me finish my point. I agree with most that, in fact, Champion is probably as good as there is with play-by-play. He's a very talented guy. They really do a good job with the field. I mean, they see everybody on the field. They're terrific at that.
But the one team they see everybody on.
And you got to remember too, you begin to wonder how much of that is really maybe faked a little bit in the sense that they're 1-5, and I guess listen, it's a lot easier doing a play-by-play of a team that wins than it is a loser because ask Al Kaline, George Kell.
I think so, Al Kaline. I think so.
But they just went through a terrible year to have to do, and they were looking like Jimmy Northup had made a statement on this show. He said, we were looking for positive things with other teams to talk about.
Yeah.
And that's obviously what you have to do. But with only a 16-game schedule, you can afford to do a lot more.
He's got to be a little bit more objective, though. That's the thing in the broadcast booth. He just somewhat objective, anyway.
You know, again, they're trying to sell tickets. You know, yesterday they only had 45 or 46,000 people in Tampa Bay.
Well, you know, another thing that really got me mad when this started, do the Lions own WWJ, or what, do they call the shots over there? Because they had a good sportscaster.
Why does this bother you so much? I don't
understand. It bothers me when a good sportscaster in this town, Jim Burke, good sportscaster, loses his job because the Lions come knocking on the door and said, okay, you got the contract, now you got to hire Mark Champion. He can just not only do our play-by-play, but he's got to have a job at the station. And a good guy loses his job. A good sportscaster in this town loses a job because the Lions control it. That bothers me.
I don't know how they hired him. I don't know how they hire people. I don't know what their policy is to hire somebody. All I can tell you is Champion's a very talented guy. Burke's a good guy, no question about it, and Burke eventually will catch on with somebody else.
I hope so. He hasn't yet.
Why don't you have this much compassion and sympathy for players when they get released or they get sent to the minor leagues?
Because they're guaranteed for the next 5 years. They don't give a hoot. That's why. That's why the guaranteed contracts are silly in sports today.
Everybody's got some form of a guarantee.
I'll tell you who I'm not. I don't really. I feel sorry for the guy, but I'm a little upset that Jimmy Carson walked out. You know, Jimmy Carson's a great guy and he's a smart kid, and he's a columnist for Sports Fans Journal as well. But I will say this: he had no business walking out on his contract with Edmonton. I mean, I don't get. You should have called some people you're close to, Jimmy, before you just take a walk like that. That is not the right thing to do. Jimmy Carson's a very talented player. I just hope that you're dealing with a tough cookie. Glenn Sather's a very tough cookie in Edmonton. He'll let him sit and rot for a while.
Later this week, we're going to have Ray Lane with us. And, of course, he does the Red Wings games. He does an awful lot with the organization. And Ray will, I'm sure, have all of the inside information.
You know, Ray Lane played pro ball, too, with the White Sox organization for a long time. Now, this is back in the Babe Ruth era, but a long time ago.
I didn't realize Ray had played.
Yes.
I had no
Ray.
idea.
Well, I mean, this is way before my time.
I ran into Ray at the Michigan State football game the other day. And of course, his head was already leaning just before the game. But you talk about bad, boring football games. The U of M Michigan State game was one of the most boring football games I've ever seen since I've been watching.
Both coaches say what a great game it was.
Well, I'll tell you what. Up in that press box, there was a big rumor going around. They're going to have to go to the courts in the city of Lansing and rename George Perlis. And I said, I obviously went right along with it. I said, what do you got to rename it for? He says, well, don't you see the offense? I said, what does that mean? He said, we're going to rename him George Scoreless.
Yeah, he has a little bit of a conservative touch to the offense. They're throwing the ball, but they're throwing those little screens, and they've got to do a little more play action.
The first two series of the game, when Michigan State had the game, they were using play action. What happened to it? Why didn't they use it after the first quarter? It was very effective. They moved the ball. All of a sudden, it disappeared. Well, whenever Enos went back to throw, it was a straight drop back pass in the whole world. And obviously, kids in college, they have a tendency to let their eyes give them away. And every time he threw the ball, there was somebody around him. It's too bad they didn't win the ball game because in the second half, they certainly outclassed and outplayed Michigan.
Well, let me tell you this, though. I don't think it was the fact what they did on offense that cost them the game. They just didn't execute the plays. Like John Langlow, an excellent kicker, just shanked the one field goal attempt, and the other one was blocked, so they should have won the game.
Well, they also had the penalty, the 5-yard penalty that allowed Michigan to kick the first field goal. I mean, they had a 35 or 36-yard field goal, maybe longer than that.
Well,
and they missed, and they have the penalty, and of course, then the next play they come back and they kick the 3 points. But it was.
Speaking of penalties, the Lions are just a dumb team. They got some.
Wait a minute, they won.
Yeah, well, I don't care if they won. They won because they had a quarterback slower than you, Denny, out there, Joe Ferguson, for crying out loud, and all that. Plus, did you some of the penalties on the Lions?
Wait a minute. We got to bring. Wait a minute. Eli's going to tell us about
no discipline of the Lions.
Eli's going to come over and tell us about all.
That's for the coach. Eli's ready. Look at Eli. Eli's ready to run here. He's ready to go.
And we will be back with Eli in just a moment.
It's a new generation of Oldsmobiles.
And I'll featuring Olds GMC trucks.
Choose from a great selection of Oldsmobiles.
Including Cutlass Supreme and the restyled Cutlass CL.
Or hundreds of GMC trucks in stock.
Complete with an Uncle Al price that can't be beat.
For sales or service.
Let Uncle Al come through for you.
This is the new generation of Olds.
East of the Pontiac Airport.
On M59 in Waterford.
If you're a sports fan, you should subscribe to this, Sports Fans Journal, and here's how. Our columnists include Ernie Harwell, George Kell, Denny McClain, Don Cherry, Jimmy Carson, Dick Vitale, George Blaha, Bob Feller, George Allen, and much more, including our new columnist, Piston John Sally. So call our 24-hour hotline at 751-1818. We send Sports Fans Journal anywhere in the U.S. Sports Fans Journal, a must for all sports fans. Call now, 751-1818, 751-1818. We're back on Sports U. Eli Zaret is here. You, of course, known at Channel 2, of course, but before that, with the Tiger pregame show. And that's what I miss about the Tiger show more than anything. Well, thanks, Eli. You'd ask him a question, he'd go into something else, George. Well, thanks,
Well, I
Eli.
tell you, 4 years of that show was plenty. That's one of the reasons I left. 85 was a long year for the Tigers after winning the World Series. And it got tough to fill material on that show.
You and George had...
No knocking what Bernie does now, but we didn't just sit around a table and talk. We did features, we went out and did stories, we did interviews, we tried to piece things together to produce some television. It got really tough in 1985.
And so you left and went to New York, and things did not exactly...
No, not as
you
I...
didn't exactly go flying to New York on a cape or anything like that with a cape. And it was a tough time for you in New York. And what I'm trying to say is you're back. Like Bill Bonds and
New York was a very revealing experience. I'd spent 12 years in this market building up an audience, and to go there without one and then not get the promotion or the situation I really needed to make it last was tough. Plus, Detroit is a great sports town, and I was stupid enough not to realize the uniqueness of a market that's big, a major market that has all the teams, but isn't so big that sports gets buried as just another form of entertainment, where you got Mets and Yankees and the fans hate each other, and Jets and Giants and they pull at each other. You mention Yankees in the TV and all the Met fans in the world hate you and think you're biased. Detroit is a major market. It's got the big teams, but it isn't so big that it still doesn't have a small town feel.
That's right. It may be the most unique major league city in the country. I mean, there is so much going on here all the time, and the people really pull for their teams.
Yeah. And there isn't a lot of other things that distract them from sports.
That's exactly right. I mean, this is a hard-working city.
Yep.
Including the announcer of the team, Mark Champion.
Everybody, you cool it now.
Cut it out.
I mean, everybody wants an honest effort.
Yes.
And as long as you give them that in this market, I mean, we're both back, though.
That's right. And they'll know. And
this is not a bad place to be back.
No, not at all.
No. Of course,
not at all.
Okay, Bruce or Sid. But a couple of, as far as some things, you came back out of desperation too. Look at it that way. I mean, coming back here is a great town to be in, like you say.
People know him. People knew me. And there's a great value in familiarity.
But TV sports is becoming. I mean, TV news. You're looking over your shoulder every day of the week. It seems like. When am I going to get the zing?
It's a brutal business. Playing professional sports is a brutal business.
Yeah, but that's contract's guaranteed for a few years. And
not everybody. You know what? Come on. For somebody who's been around as long as you, how are you going to be so naive?
Naive?
I mean, you got a few players at the top that make money. What do you think the average salaries of every professional baseball player? I bet it isn't $15,000.
Average salary in the big leagues is $800,000.
Not in the big leagues. It isn't $800,000. But you got a top end. Ron, I'll tell you one thing. Anybody who's in the top 100 of his profession in this world, whether it's being a heart surgeon, a doctor, an actor, or a major league pitcher, deserves to make the money he makes.
You say they deserve to make. There's no way there should be guaranteed contracts more than 1 year because the players lie down on the job.
Wait a second. It's not the major league players that agree to do the 3- and 4-year contracts. If the owners want 1-year contracts, there would be 1-year contracts.
If the player had pride, they'd still do it.
Is there anything wrong with working your entire life for a particular profession and having more than a little tiny bit of 1-year security? Is there anything wrong with that?
When half your players are released, they still get paid for another 2 or 3 years?
That's not the player's fault. Right. He's got a great agent. The organization agreed to it. Listen. Everybody in sports works on what's going to happen the next game the next year. That's the bottom line. You got to be paid for what's going to happen. Some guys are rewarded after so many years for being there for years and years and years. But that's the exception. And you pay a guy for potential. Look at Rodney Pete. Look at Barry Sanders.
There are guys that get overpaid, guys that get underpaid. There's no way you can judge a salary and know exactly what a player is going to produce. Some make more than they should, some make less than they should, but the market bears what it does and they get what they deserve.
Not necessarily. I think the fact fact that it's guaranteed more than 1 year, the players lie down. There's too many
I
of
think
those.
long-term
Too
contracts
many of
can
those.
have certain problems, but
Yeah.
then again, there's nothing wrong with
But
guaranteed
you know, I'll
for
tell you,
years.
like, the thing that has been most dramatic in the world of at least baseball is that if they have a bad year, they don't get the cuts anymore. And even
Yeah.
in 20% of a million, it's still making 800,000,
Right.
and nobody ever gets a 20%
What about the
cut.
renegotiation deal? When the players demand to renegotiate, like Ron Hextall won't be in camp, he demands to renegotiate, and yet if he has a bad year, the team doesn't come to him and we're going to renegotiate your contract down.
That's wrong.
One
It's a two-way
aspect.
street.
That's one aspect.
That's one
of it,
aspect
yeah.
of it, and it's a good point. But there's a lot of organizations that want to go out there before some form of free agency, despite what the sport is. Every sport now has some form of free agency. The organizations, if it's a valuable product, they want to tie the guy
That's
up.
right.
They'll sit down and renegotiate.
That doesn't
it.
tie him up. They'll walk
Sure
up. No, it doesn't tie him up.
You know
Ron
what?
Hextall didn't tie
This
up.
is a lifetime
way to
of
talk to
a
him.
lifetime of
Just
Hey,
thinking.
whoa, did it tie up Ron Hextall? Why is it going to tie the guy up if he signs a 5-year guaranteed contract and next year said, I'm underpaid, I'm walking out if you don't pay
And
me?
you know what? If he's not worth it, then
Let
his
him go.
career's over.
That's
See
right.
you later,
The
pal.
trouble is the teams will come flying back to him, and that's the
All right,
problem.
let's move on.
Let's move on. Let's talk about the Lions and.
Oh, yeah, there's a positive thing, guys. Real
Hey,
positive, guys.
listen,
Don't
I
have
want
to.
I want to tell you one thing. I don't want to remind you of bad predictions. You said they wouldn't win a ball game. They've already won one that's closer to winning 4 or 5 already this year.
Denny, they're not the win fourth. The only reason they
Let
won
me
is
just
a
say one
58-year-old
thing.
quarterback.
Let me just say one thing, and
Yeah.
I don't want to be an apologist for Wayne Fonts or the Lions or anything. However,
He needs it.
unfortunately, when you look at the Lions of 1989, your thinking is colored by the last 30 years of Lion football. So anytime a new coach takes over, he struggles. Now, Wayne Fonts may or may not turn out to be a great coach. We don't know that. However, he does deserve a certain amount of time before you jump to conclusions based on what previous coaches did.
No, I'm not
Bill
basing
Walsh was
this
2
on
and
he's done.
14. Ray Perkins had a couple of tough years. He inherits a bad team and he tries to change it. Half the players he has right now he has changed, and half more he's going to change again. So you got to give him a certain amount of time before you say this isn't working. If there's anything positive to say, and I can say it, I was in their locker room all last week, and they seem to maintain some type of positive belief that what they're doing is right. And the
Wayne-
fact that he sustained that is something positive
Wayne
to say.
Fonts
So
talks a good game. He talks a very good game, and that's
he's
how he got his job.
All first-year coaches have to talk a
Well,
good
he's not a
game.
first-year coach. He's been around forever, and I think he's been a loser forever.
Listen, every good coach, bad coach, indifferent coach, always has to go to the end in his first year. You got to be a cheerleader. This, like Eli just pointed out, they've been bad for 25 or 30 years. It is time that somebody comes in, at least for the first year, be a tremendous cheerleader. I mean, we saw Fonts' personality change a little bit about a week or 10 days ago, but maybe this will bring it back to the old Wayne Fonts again.
They're not disciplined on the field, and they weren't disciplined against
Well,
Tampa.
let's
They
talk
got
about
bad
that when we
players.
come back,
They got
okay?
bad
Yeah,
players.
they got more talent than they did a year ago. This guy makes Darryl Rogers look like Newt Rockney.
More of
That's
this,
bad.
more of the Ron Cameron outrageousness when we come back.
I just tell the truth.
Hi, Mike here, owner of the Full House Restaurant. I'd like to personally invite you to come down and see why we have more than just the best burger in town.
If you're a sports fan, you should subscribe to this, Sports Fans Journal, and here's how. Our columnists include Ernie Harwell, George Kell, Denny McClain, Don Cherry, Jimmy Carson, Dick Vitale, George Blaha, Bob Feller, George Allen, and much more, including our new columnist, Piston John Sally. So call our 24-hour hotline at 751-1818. We send Sports Fans Journal anywhere in the U.S. Sports Fans Journal, a must for all sports fans. Call now, 751-1818, 751-1818.
Shut up.
We're back on Sports View with Eli Zaret. Denny McClain's here. I'm Ron Cameron, trying to defend these idiotic players today, and I just don't know how because I think most of them are too stupid to even know their own name. And I
Mr.
say that
IQ?
directly.
Okay, Ron,
no, I'm
you're
not
a
talking
Rhodes
about an
Scholar.
IQ.
We'll accept
We're
that
not
from
talking
you.
about a Rhodes Scholar. We're talking about athletes today that don't care because they're getting paid too much money. It's guaranteed,
Fine.
and they just walk
Can
out
I
on the
ask
deal.
you a question?
Yeah, go ahead and
Point.
ask a question.
Are you a frustrated athlete
Not at all.
that you feel?
Never played it, never tried to play it.
Well, my question is, why knock these guys? Do you know? Let me point something out. Your radio show, your television show, everything that you do in your life, your magazine, is all related to sports. Why knock the people that give you the material to do what you do. You make a lot of money at some of these things.
No, I don't.
Why?
Really, not a whole lot.
Oh, okay. Well,
I've got a
excuse
good,
me.
I've got a good business. I got a good
Right.
business. As far as making, I don't have anything guaranteed me like these. Like
Wait
the
a
players
second.
do.
You made
I
a
work for
statement.
living.
If a guy walks out on a contract, Ron, he can't get paid. There is
I'm
no
talking-
way he can get paid.
When you have a guaranteed contract and you retire,
you are
you're
ma-
still getting paid on that contract.
No, you are not.
No,
If
you're
they
not.
release you or retire,
Ron.
it's one of the most insecure businesses in the world.
Why is
You
George
make it,
trying to answer
you
me
make
that?
it sound like these guys, it's just they play baseball, so they're set for the rest of their lives. You are talking about 1% of the baseball playing population,
Well, you're also
and you are making
talking about-
blanket statements about lack of motivation and all this other stuff.
I'm making
It's
blanket
nonsense.
statements because it's true. Why do you think George Steinbrenner has a $50 million players that he's paying the players right now that aren't even playing?
Because he's a bad owner and he's
But you
paying
just
for
said
his
they're not getting
mistakes.
paid. That he's paying $50 million to
Hey, man,
players that
make
aren't
some
playing.
mistakes.
Ron, be specific. Who's he paying $50 million to?
He's still paying Don Gullett.
Don Gullett had a contract. Don Gullett had a long-term deal with Mr. Steinbrenner. Mr. Steinbrenner released Don Gullett. Mr. Gullett didn't quit. Steinbrenner's got to honor the contract if he releases him. It
Mr.
doesn't
Gullett
work the
quit.
other way.
Don Gullett quit because of his arm problem.
Did you guys invite me down here to renew this old, tired
Well,
old
what do
conversation?
you want to talk about,
Had I
Eli?
known, I wouldn't have bothered.
Well, let me ask
It's up to you to ask me a responsible
All right,
question.
let's ask you a question. Let's ask you for a question. You came back to Detroit from New York
Yeah.
then. Right. What happened in New York? You
What
mentioned
has that got to do with this show? Well, let's talk about the Lions. This guy's got all the inside info.
Oh, if you got some inside info, let's hear it.
Is Wayne Fonts going to get his name on the show?
No, I mean, listen, when a team loses and loses and loses, my problem on the show is I'm an honest reporter. You know I'm not a cheerleader.
I know you,
Right?
Eli, yeah.
I'm not a cheerleader. Week in, week out, what are you going to beat him on the head and say you guys can't catch passes, you guys can't do this, you guys can't do that? I give him credit. He has maintained a certain amount of belief in the system. He knows who's not going to be there. He's got 4 receivers that aren't NFL caliber, and he's got a pass receiving offense. He's got a lot of problems, but he's kept them buoyed up. When was the last time the Lions came back to win a game? I think it shows he picked the right quarterback, at least in Rodney Peete, and that there's maybe a little belief that this guy's got the moxie and this guy's got the magic that he can win. They've made some positive steps. So I'm not going to condemn Wayne Fonts and this team for 30 years of horrible football that he's not responsible
Okay, now
for.
you're right at what you're saying there, but even to come with the Rodney Peete, thrown to the Wolves, playing him out of desperation, the man is hurt, the man's a 6th-round draft choice, no rookies turn
He had
teams
4
around.
other quarterbacks that couldn't do it. Could
You're
any
right.
other quarterback
No.
have won
No,
the
you're
game
right there.
yesterday?
You're right.
Is any one of them even have the speed to scramble into the
What does
end
that tell you
zone?
about the organization when they got players like that here?
Ron, he's just starting.
We're not talking about Wayne. I'm talking about the organization here. I didn't mention Wayne.
You want
The
to talk
above him.
Oh, okay, the line organization. We all agree on the line organization. How they butchered things for years and years. There's no argument there.
Well, what are they going to do now? Russ Thomas is going to go out. I guess Jerry Vinicius is going to get the job, or I would hope that Jerry Vinicius would get. He did a good job in
I
Chicago.
think he will. I think he will.
I hope he would, because what Russ Thomas has done is just ruined this team for 30 years.
No arguments.
Well, and I'm not totally sure it's totally be blamed upon Mr. Who were you just talking about?
Thomas.
Thomas.
But also, Mr. Ford's got an awful lot to do with this.
Sure does.
I know today in the paper there's all kinds of quotes about Mr. Ford today being so happy the ball club won and everything else. I mean, it was again, and I get back to what I said earlier, it was almost more important for Wayne Fonts to beat Tampa Bay than it was the first win of the season. That's just the
You
way
think
it comes.
so?
Oh, I
Do you
really
really think so?
Wayne Fonts wants to go back to Tampa Bay and stick it in their eardrum.
Maybe. Wayne Fonts desperately wanted a victory, though. He would have
But
taken
Wayne
over
Fonts,
anybody.
but let me tell you something. Wayne Fonts, if there was any job in America that
Right.
Wayne Fonts really wanted, it
was
was
that
the
job.
Tampa
That's true.
Bay job.
That's true.
Period. So every time he's got special desire and
Yeah.
special fire burning in him that he wants to beat Tampa
He
Bay
might
in
have
such
died
a
and
way.
already gone to heaven.
And he wants to beat him 90 to
Or
nothing.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to...
I'm going to give you another question to ask me, Ron?
No, what I want to give you another question, ask me with all the inside information. Who's going to be here and who's not going to be here at the end of the season on the line? You said the information inside, Denny?
I already told you that he feels he needs 4 new receivers.
And you think-
What about offensive line?
He
It's
needs
so
a
offensive, it
cornerback.
stinks.
He needs 2 defensive ends. There's a lot of people that he knows he needs. He's already replaced half of them. Look what Tampa did, which is, although they had a bad day yesterday, they drafted well for 2 or 3 years under Ray Perkins, and they've shown marked improvement. That's what they have to do.
Quick question for you before we break. How long can Rodney Peete run around back there before he gets killed?
That's a
the
good
problem.
question. But you know what? That's what they have to have right now. they wouldn't have won the game if he couldn't hightail it and run for his life. That's one of the reasons why he made it. His passing is very spotty. Sometimes he zips it in there, and sometimes it's 20 yards over the guy's head. But for what they're trying to do, and at this stage of development, he's the best choice they have.
Because I would give you a prediction. I believe that their first-round draft choice next year will be another quarterback.
Very likely so.
Because this guy keeps running this option. They're going to option him to EMS. I mean, because you just see these guys coming at him, and his chances of surviving. No one's ever been able to run the option in the NFL.
Right.
And sooner or later, the guy's got to have a broken hip or a broken leg or a broken hip.
Barry Sanders.
It's not a high percentage play against NFL defenses.
But Barry's used to being hit like that. Quarterbacks aren't. They're soft, nice, bright people like pitchers. We'll be right back right after this.
Oh, boy.
Hey, Brian. Listen, you want to get high? I got some great stuff.
No thanks, Mike. That junk's bad news.
Smart kid. He doesn't need that stuff. Nobody does. I'm McGruff, the crime dog. Now, watch these kids.
I'm bored. Why don't we get wasted?
Why don't you get real?
I've got a better idea. Why don't you get lost?
See that? It's happening everywhere. So, if anyone ever wants to turn you on, just turn them off. It's a great way to help take a bite out of crime.
Detroit's first NBA championship team. The Pistons revel in the excitement of their historic season on Pass every month with Pistons Update. Fred McLeod looks at last year's incredible plays, inspired coaching, and future front office moves that will affect this year's new squad. We'll feature highlights and candid interviews to keep you up to date with the bad boys during the offseason. Catch Pistons Update each and every month on Michigan's cable network of NBA champions, Pass Sports.
Binary Computers is celebrating their 9th anniversary, and how they've become one of Detroit's top independent computer dealers is really simple. A great selection of brand name computer products, outstanding service, and highly knowledgeable trained consultants who make things understandable in plain English. Binary now has facsimile machines and telephone systems, so stop in for special anniversary savings at Binary Computers, Metro Detroit's Business Computer Center, Woodward at 12 Mile, Berkeley. Remember, if you haven't got a computer, you'd better get one before your competitor does.
What do these women have in common? They were all Girl Scouts. Girl Scouting showed them that they could do or be anything. An ambassador to the United Nations or an Olympic champion. Girl Scouting inspires girls to dream big and prepares them to meet the challenges of a demanding adult world. Your daughter should be a Girl Scout. She'll be in very good company, and she'll get the right start.
Nice to have all that information given to us by Eli. We're out of time to get him so much information. Eli, thanks for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure.
And I got to say, the advertising, we got some doozies out there. Al Dietrich, Oldsmobile. Where the runway ends, the deal's
Al's the greatest.
Oh, he is the greatest. In Waterford, we got Binary Computers on Woodward and 12 Mile in Berkeley. We have Sports Fans Journal, the hottest magazine going, dial 751-1818, 24 hours a day. We've got the Full House Restaurant, the best burger in Ypsilanti, on Ecorse Road at Michigan Avenue in Ypsi. And we have one more at Pass, Pro-Am Sports Systems. We'll be back next show with Ray Lane,
Ray Lane will
the
be
Dean
with
of Sportscasters by many, many years in Detroit.